Thank you for joining Early Literacy. Before we get started, it will be a good idea to have something to take notes with. Please feel free to take screenshots and download the letter and sound sequence chart on the Canvas page. Take a moment to read the title and then review our objectives for today. Our objectives today are grow our existing early literacy knowledge to better meet the needs of our students, understand early literacy and the components and that they are taught systematically and explicitly, describe the building blocks to phonological awareness. Why early literacy? Evidence shows our students are missing foundational reading skills. Now back to our title. Our German scholars are able to quickly decipher the title of this page, but to those of us who are not fluent in German, well, then it's just foreign language. The letters look to us like strange symbols and do not have any meaning. When our students have a lack of exposure to early literacy concepts or print, this is what comes to mind when you think about literacy. The National Council of English Teachers say literacy is the ability to read, write, speak, and listen in a way that lets us communicate effectively and make sense of the world. At its simplest, literacy is the way we interact with the world around us. It's how we communicate with others via reading and writing, but also speaking, listening, and creating. Today we are taking a fresh look at early literacy with a focus on the foundational components for pre-K to second grade. If you teach a child in any capacity, it's important for you to know the differences and the huge impact each component has on helping our learners to read, write, and make understanding of the world around them. The review will include defining print awareness and oral language and listing the look-fors and activities in any early literacy classroom. We will dig into the meaning of phonological and phonemic awareness and then the progression towards phonics and word study instruction. Take a moment to review early literacy and brain facts. Children are wired to read. However, they must receive explicit, systematic instruction to connect the wires. You will see in the next diagram how important it is to capitalize on a young child's active brain and focus on experiences, repetition, relationships, and exposure. Notice the importance of capitalizing and focusing on the early years of literacy development. As students progress through school, these foundational prerequisites must be mastered to ensure student success. Before we dive into the components of early literacy, you will hear the words explicit, systematic, and intentional mentioned throughout the presentation. Based on the definitions, how do you demonstrate each of these terms during your reading block? Oral language lays the foundation for reading and writing as children enter school. Building a strong oral language foundation also helps build confidence and an overall sense of well-being. This helps to nurture their social and emotional needs. We've all heard of the word gap, and some call it the opportunity gap. Small children in the most talkative homes hear on average 20 to 30,000 words in a day, mostly through overheard conversations, books, nursery rhymes, and being directly spoken to, while children who come from less talkative homes, and in most cases poverty-stricken homes, hear approximately a quarter of that, meaning lack of talk is setting back their vocabulary and cognitive development and future reading skills before the first day of school. Kenneth Wong at Brown University says this disadvantage is already almost irreversible. Bottom line is, children need to talk. Let them express themselves, create, and talk. Yes, show and tell is back. What a great way to teach accountable talk, introduce expectations when speaking and listening, and learning how to ask questions. Like little sponges, they soak everything in and repeat from the sounds letters and words make to the inflection, tone, mood, and rhythm of spoken language. Here are some looked-fors or examples of oral language. Hold conversations and model proper pronunciation. Follow your child's lead. Respond with interest to anything that has caught their interest, and try to have a conversation go back and forth a few times. The more conversations children have, the more talking practice and information they have to build their language skills. Let them describe things, sing songs, play games, role play, and tell jokes. Be intentional and explicit with your directions, and always maintain eye contact. Remember to read frequently and often. Concepts of print and a print-rich environment is under the same umbrella as print awareness. It's more than holding a book and pointing to the first letter. Yes, these skills are very important, but it's also about students seeing, hearing real-world, everyday words. This happens by children being exposed to print in all forms and holding conversations. The ability to understand how print works does not emerge magically and unaided. It must be taught. Children with print awareness begin to understand that written language is connected to oral language. They begin to see that spoken language and written language carry a message and can both be used for information and enjoyment. Thinking back to early literacy and brain facts, print awareness is all about exposure. Children need to learn how to handle books and how books are organized, but also print is all around us. It starts with environmental print, such as McDonald's or stop signs. We need to encourage students to play and interact with print, explore grocery ads, create grocery lists, view menus, create menus, take a food order, bring in food boxes and have students organize them by the first sound, read and reread big books. Let them create their own big book while reinforcing print conventions, words, and letters. Print awareness is all about exposure. Read to students. Provide practice with pattern and predictable books. Model and discuss how books are organized to reinforce book and print awareness. Provide multiple opportunities for students to hear what a good reader sounds like and expose students to print using big books. Encourage and allow students to interact and play with print as showcased on the previous slide. Label and name objects and centers to continually expose future readers to print. Remember, students learn to read from speech to print. Phonological awareness is a broad skill or umbrella that encompasses oral language parts and is auditory. The building blocks are essential and is the greatest indicator of student reading success. Each block or step must be taught explicitly and in a systematic fashion. In pre-K and kindergarten, instruction begins with an emphasis on oral language and awareness of sounds, Activities might include listening to rhymes, alliteration, identifying the initial sounds of pictures or spoken words, listening for how many words are in a spoken sentence, and listening for the number of syllables in a word.
Phonological awareness is an awareness that the words that we speak can be taken apart. And phonological referring to the sound system of language. It's something that we do auditorily. We're listening to words, we're listening to sentences, we're listening to language, and we're hearing it. So it's not about what we're seeing, it's all about what we're hearing. When we talk about phonological awareness with teachers and we teach teachers about that skill, we say phonological awareness skills can be done with your eyes closed so that they understand there's a distinction between phonological awareness and phonics. Phonological awareness is a broad term that encompasses language in different size chunks, if that's one way to think about it. So sentences can be taken apart word by word. So young children can clap or march to, I like ice cream, I like pizza, and we get them to really be able to take those sentences apart word by word and understand words can be taken apart that way. And then once they get that concept, we can actually get them to clap the syllables in words that have more than one syllable. So elephant, giraffe. And when they can do that, we go to the next step where they have to actually break those syllables down into smaller units. Those units are referred to as phonemes. A phoneme is a speech sound. So every language has a finite number of those sounds. English has 44 of them. And before we even introduce kids to the fact that these sounds are represented by letters, again, at a listening and an auditory level, we want them to be able to take those sounds apart within a word. So for example, the word same. We have the child say same. I have the same color on today that my best friend does. Okay, so we put it in the context of meaning, and then we start with the beginning sound in the word same and stretch it out. What's the first sound you hear? Same. And initially, kids can hear that first sound. Once they're good at isolating that initial sound, we then shift them to the final sound. Same. And again, because we're very strategically and explicitly pulling out words that have sounds at the end and the beginning that can be stretched out, we can get them to be pretty good at accurately telling us the sound they hear at the end. From there, we shift to the medial sound, the sound in the middle, in this case, A, right? So same, again, we can stretch out that vowel sound. So in the word same, there are three sounds. It may be confusing, and it can be confusing in some respects, because the word same, again, as a skilled reader, we know there's an E at the end. And a lot of times when we do these activities, a great activities called Say It and Move It, you'll get a precocious child pulling another chip down because they'll know there's another letter there. Say, no, this isn't about the letters that you're seeing. This is about the sounds that you're hearing. So it's a very important skill. Phonemic awareness is very predictive of a child's ability to be able to read words and decode. So it's an incredibly important skill to teach, and it's important for teachers to understand there's a sequence of doing that, right? From the biggest size phonological awareness that we talked about earlier to those little bitty sounds called phonemes.
This is a breakdown of the phonological awareness continuum with examples under each building block. These are intended to be taught early and explicitly and mastered rapidly by all students. Take some time to review the continuum. Jot down any clarifying questions you might have. Reflect on what each of these building blocks look like in your classroom, and how do you compensate for a missed step? How can your building principal, reading specialist, and instructional coach support you in clinching student achievement. Phonemic awareness is not phonics. It's a precursor to phonics instruction. Phonemic awareness is the ability to hear, notice, think about, and work with or manipulate the individual sounds or phonemes in spoken language. Phonemic awareness is the last building block in phonological awareness. This is a kindergarten Missouri Learning Reading Foundation standard. The expectation on RAP states the student will develop phonemic awareness in the reading process by segmenting words into 2 or 3 phonemes. Notice the prerequisites prior to meeting this standard and compare the requirements to the building blocks of phonological awareness. Students will struggle developing phonemic awareness in reading if one or more of the phonemic awareness includes 44 phonemes in the English language, including sounds represented by letter combinations. Phonemic awareness has a direct effect size of 0.86 per John Hattie and the National Reading Panel. The effect size drops drastically when a building block or step is missing. Explicitly teaching phonemic awareness allows for greater printed word recognition as it requires readers to notice how letters represent sounds and eventually spelling rules for those sounds. It provides readers a way to approach sounding out, reading new words. It is intended to be taught explicitly, systematically, and mastered rapidly by all students. Phonemic awareness is another layer to acquiring phonological awareness. Each skill builds upon another. Jan Richardson offers suggested systematic and intentional teaching points for skill focus and sound sorts in her Next Step book, starting on page 289. Reading Rockets provides a plethora of phonemic awareness activities. Here are the skills broken down with examples. We suggest to take a screenshot and refer to the examples as you prepare for a whole group or small group lesson. Jot down a couple of targeted skills you know your students struggle with or areas of growth you would like to explore and develop a new teaching approach. This is what lack of phonemic awareness looks like. Children who lack phonemic awareness cannot blend, segment, and manipulate sounds within words. Basically, they are missing a phonological building block and will need extra support. In order to have a better understanding of the systematic approach to phonics and word study, it might be a good idea to go ahead and have your letters and sound sequence chart handy. As students continue to solidify phonemic awareness, they will begin to read text, write words and messages, and stories of their own. Phonics refers to teaching relationships between sounds and written letters. Word study refers to a student's ability to decode more complex words. The combination of these two help children with word recognition, reading, and spelling. Good readers do not always depend primarily on context to identify new words. Remember, they still need to be able to decipher or decode a word in order to understand its meaning. Phonics and word study provide a perfect opportunity for differentiation. Phonics and word study can appear daunting, and yes, there is a lot to cover. Phonics and word study is meant to be woven into any pre-planned instruction time. By having an intentional time, the next step is to have a clear understanding of what to teach. And finally, utilize your resources at hand to prepare you on how to teach and monitor for student success. We have walked through a rather wide overview of early literacy today. Hopefully, this fresh look has reminded you how each component demands your expertise to ensure our students' success. Oral language, print awareness, phonological and phonemic awareness, phonics and word study require an explicit, systematic, and above all, intentional approach. Take a moment to answer the following questions. How do I address each of these steps? What actions do I take when a student misses a step? How do I develop my own clarity and efficacy to ensure student success? Thank you so much for being part of today's learning. Consider this quote before you leave. Primary teachers are the only second chance young students have if they come from homes missing the opportunities